The Elder Scrolls is filled with unforgettable characters, legendary heroes, powerful rulers, Daedric princes, and companions who have become icons of the series. But for every character players remember, there are dozens more who quietly fade into the background. Some only appear for a single quest before disappearing forever. Others live in remote villages that few players ever revisit. And some have surprisingly interesting stories hidden behind just a handful of lines of dialogue, only to be overlooked because they're surrounded by far more important characters. What's fascinating is that many of these NPCs help make Tamriel feel like a living world. They have their own routines, struggles, and personalities, even if most players never stop to notice them. So, we're stepping back away from the heroes and villains everyone knows and shining a light on the characters who are almost always passed by, forgotten, or ignored. These are the most ignored NPCs in all of the Elder Scrolls universe. Among all the recurring characters in the Elder Scrolls, few are as recognizable and yet as consistently overlooked as Maik the Liar. Since his first appearance in the Elder Scrolls III Morrowind, Maik has wandered across Tamriel with no permanent home, no major questline, and no obvious purpose beyond sharing strange observations with anyone fortunate enough to find him. He isn't a king, a guild leader, or a legendary warrior. He doesn't hand out powerful artifacts or become a champion. In fact, many players can complete entire playthroughs without meeting him even once. That is exactly what makes Maik such a fascinating character. He has appeared in multiple Elder Scrolls games spanning decades, yet because he never stays in one place and constantly is travelling, he is remarkably easy to miss. Unlike NPCs rooted to famous cities or essential quest hubs, Maik exists almost entirely off the beaten path. He quietly walks roads, crosses wilderness trails, and appears in unexpected corners of the world, waiting for players curious enough to wander away from the main adventure. In many ways, despite being one of the franchise's longest-running recurring characters, Maik has become one of its most consistently ignored. The first reason for this is remarkably simple. Maik never stays still. Most memorable Elder Scrolls characters become associated with a particular place. Bolgraf belongs to Whiterun, Caius Cassades belongs to Balmora, Lucian Lechance becomes inseparable from the Dark Brotherhood. Players naturally remember characters through locations. Maik deliberately avoids that pattern. He has no permanent residence, no fixed destination, no familiar building players can visit whenever they choose. Instead, he walks, constantly. His home is the road itself. That alone makes him significantly harder to encounter. Unlike ordinary NPCs following predictable daily schedules, Maik's appearances depend almost entirely on chance. Players may discover him while exploring one mountain pass. Another player may find him hours later on a completely different road. Some never encounter him during an entire playthrough. Others meet him multiple times without actively searching. His unpredictable nature transforms every encounter into something special. You don't visit Maik, you happen to come upon him. That distinction fundamentally changes how players remember him. His role within the Elder Scrolls universe also contributes to his overlooked status. Maik rarely participates in major events. He doesn't rescue kingdoms, lead armies, join political conspiracies, or influence the outcome of central questlines. Instead, he observes, comments, moves on. His dialogue almost always focuses on the world rather than himself. He discusses rumours, game mechanics, player habits, oddities within Tamriel, then quietly continues his journey. That limited involvement means players have very little mechanical reason to seek him out. He offers no significant rewards, no exclusive equipment, no major quests. Only conversations. Ironically, that is precisely why so many fans treasure him, because he exists purely for curiosity. One of Maik's defining characteristics is his refusal to provide straightforward answers. Everything he says carries uncertainty. Some statements are true, others are obvious exaggerations. Many function as humorous commentary aimed directly at the player rather than the characters within the world. Bethesda uses Maik almost like a bridge between Tamriel and reality. He jokes about gameplay mechanics, references previous Elder Scrolls titles, hints at development decisions, occasionally contradicts himself entirely. The result is one of the most unique dialogue styles in the franchise. Yet because none of these conversations are required, countless players never hear them at all. That makes his writing strangely hidden despite its quality. His appearances across multiple games further reinforce his wandering identity. Beginning in Morrowind, continuing through Oblivion, Skyrim, The Elder Scrolls Online, and other entries, Maik always arrives in a different region, different province, different era. Yet his role remains remarkably consistent. He appears briefly, shares observations, continues travelling. This consistency has generated one of the franchise's oldest mysteries. Is every appearance the same? Are they descendants sharing the same name, a family tradition, or something stranger? The game never provides a definitive answer. That ambiguity has become part of his charm. Players speculate endlessly. Maik simply just keeps walking. Skyrim perhaps demonstrates his elusive nature most effectively. Unlike NPCs anchored to towns or faction headquarters, Maik wanders roads throughout the province. One moment he may appear crossing the plains outside Whiterun. Later he could be walking through the Rift. Players cannot rely on ordinary habits to find him. They must genuinely explore. Even then, timing matters. Approach too early, take another route, fast travel instead of walking, and Maik quietly passes by unnoticed. He almost rewards slower playstyles, those willing to appreciate the journey rather than simply rushing between objectives. Compared to characters like Sheogorath or Pathurnax, the contrast becomes quite fascinating. Both possess unforgettable personalities. Both occupy fixed locations players eventually discover. Maik possesses equally memorable dialogue, yet because he refuses permanence, he remains significantly easier to overlook. His mobility becomes both his defining feature and his greatest obstacle to recognition. Another reason players often ignore him is because he initially appears ordinary. He isn't surrounded by guards, he doesn't wear extravagant armor, there is no dramatic introduction. At first glance, he looks like another Khajiit traveller. Only players choosing to initiate conversation discover his true significance. Many likely walk straight past him without ever realising who they just encountered. His appearance hides extraordinary familiarity beneath complete novelty. That subtlety perfectly suits his character. The roads themselves become symbolic through Maik. Throughout the Elder Scrolls, roads connect cities, cultures, and stories. He exists between all of them. He belongs everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. Unlike characters rooted within specific political systems or social structures, Maik remains completely independent. Borders seem irrelevant to kingdoms, temporary. He simply continues walking. That freedom distinguishes him from almost every recurring NPC in the series. There is also something quietly philosophical about his lifestyle. Most Elder Scrolls characters pursue goals, power, knowledge, revenge, wealth. Maik appears content simply experiencing the world. His observations often focus on curiosity rather than ambition. He notices strange details others ignore, questions assumptions, challenges certainty, and perhaps that is why players frequently underestimate him. He never appears interested in importance, only perspective. His popularity within the community creates another interesting contradiction. Among long-time Elder Scrolls fans, Maik has become iconic. His quotes circulate constantly, his humour remains widely appreciated, yet within the game themselves, he remains one of the easiest recurring NPCs to miss. Recognition outside the games contrasts sharply with how often players actually encounter him. He has become famous for being difficult to find. That paradox perfectly captures his identity. Even mechanically, Maik encourages different behaviour. Modern players often rely heavily on fast travel, quest markers, efficient routes. Maik quietly rewards the opposite approach. Walking, exploration, following roads simply to see where they lead. Players embracing slower journeys naturally encounter him more frequently than others. Those rushing between objectives usually don't see him quite as often. In that sense, Maik becomes almost a reward for curiosity itself. Perhaps the most overlooked aspect of Maik is how much personality Bethesda manages to create using remarkably little screen time. He rarely speaks for more than a minute, never dominates lengthy quest lines, yet players remember his peculiar way of referring to himself in the third person. His dry humour, his cryptic observations. Every appearance feels concise, almost economical. Nothing is wasted. That efficiency demonstrates exceptionally strong character writing. Few NPCs accomplish so much using so little dialogue. Compared to other ignored NPCs throughout Tamriel, Maik occupies a unique position. Many characters become forgotten because they lack depth. Maik becomes ignored despite possessing considerable depth. Players simply don't encounter him often enough. His obscurity results from design rather than quality. That distinction makes him particularly interesting. Ultimately, Maik the Liar earns his place among the most ignored NPCs in all of the Elder Scrolls because he embodies the spirit of exploration more completely than almost any other character in the franchise. He has no permanent home, no predictable schedule, no major faction, no essential questline demanding the player's attention. Instead, he quietly wanders the roads of Tamriel, appearing only to those willing to slow down, explore, and look beyond the next objective. Across multiple games spanning decades, he has remained remarkably consistent, a mysterious traveller offering equal parts wisdom, humour, misdirection, and self-aware commentary before disappearing once again into the wilderness. Most players remember the cities they visited, the dragons they defeated, the Daedric princes they encountered. Far fewer remember the lone Khajiit walking peacefully along a forgotten road, ready to share a few strange thoughts before continuing his endless journey. And perhaps that's exactly how Maik would want it. Never tied to one place, never staying long enough to become ordinary, always moving, always observing, forever existing somewhere beneath myth and reality, quietly reminding us that some of the Elder Scrolls' greatest characters aren't waiting at the end of a questline. They're simply walking down the road, hoping someone takes the time to stop and say hello. For many players, Fargoth is the very first named NPC they ever meet in the Elder Scrolls III Morrowind. Standing in the tiny fishing village of Seder Neen, he greets the newly arrived prisoner with a nervous smile and a request for help recovering a stolen ring. On the surface, he seems completely unremarkable. He's a timid Bosmer with no combat prowess, no political influence, and no role in the main story beyond the opening moments of the game. Yet despite being one of the first faces players encounter, Fargoth has become one of the most consistently ignored NPCs in the entire Elder Scrolls series. Ironically, the further players progress into Morrowind, the easier it becomes to forget he ever existed. Surrounded by great houses, living gods, ancient prophecies, and some of the deepest lore in the franchise, Fargoth quietly fades into the background almost immediately after his introductory quest concludes. He remains in Seder Neen for the rest of the game, living the same modest life while players go on to reshape the fate of Vvardenfell. His story never dramatically develops, his circumstances never significantly improve, and unless players deliberately choose to return, Fargoth becomes little more than a distant memory from the opening hour of an adventure that can easily last hundreds of hours. The irony begins almost immediately. Bethesda clearly intended Fargoth to make a strong first impression. He is one of the first people willing to speak kindly to the player. Fresh off the prison ship, surrounded by unfamiliar customs and strange architecture, players naturally gravitate towards one of the few friendly faces available. His missing ring quest serves as an important purpose. It introduces dialogue, inventory management, quest structure, reward systems. In many ways, Fargoth functions as Morrowind's first proper tutorial NPC. His role is foundational, yet tutorial characters often suffer the same fate. Once they've served their purpose, players move on. Fargoth becomes an early lesson rather than a lasting companion. His personality contributes to this as well. Unlike many memorable Elder Scrolls characters, Fargoth isn't especially bold. He isn't humorous in an exaggerated way. He doesn't possess extraordinary ambitions. Instead, he is nervous, polite, quietly appreciative when the player returns his ring. Those traits make him believable, but they also make him easy to overlook. He doesn't demand attention, he simply just exists. That ordinary nature becomes almost invisible once players encounter larger-than-life personalities later in the game. Then there is Hariskar Flatfoot. Shortly after helping Fargoth, players receive an opportunity to betray him. Hariskar asks the player to spy on Fargoth and discover the hiding place of his secret stash of gold. Many players accept. The quest offers easy money during the difficult opening hours of Morrowind. From a gameplay perspective, the decision makes sense. From Fargoth's perspective, however, it's surprisingly tragic. The first person to show the player kindness often becomes the first person players choose to rob. That betrayal has quietly become one of the most famous moments in Morrowind, not because Fargoth is especially important, but because he is so vulnerable. He trusts the player completely. Players frequently repay that trust by stealing everything he has. Even the way Fargoth hides his belongings says something about his character. His valuables are tucked away inside a hollow tree stump near Seyda. It's hardly a sophisticated hiding place. It reflects someone with limited means trying to protect what little wealth they possess. Unlike wealthy nobles hiding treasures inside heavily guarded manors, Fargoth's entire fortune fits inside a single small cache. Stealing it doesn't merely inconvenience him, it likely represents a significant loss. Yet many players never stop to consider the consequences. The gold becomes another early game resource. Fargoth ultimately becomes another forgotten victim. Seyda itself contributes heavily to his obscurity. The village functions almost entirely as a starting area. Players learn mechanics, complete a handful of introductory quests, then begin travelling across Vvardenfell. Very little encourages them to return. Unlike cities serving as faction headquarters or commercial centres, Seyda quickly loses practical importance. As a result, everyone living there gradually disappears from the player's memory. Fargoth remains exactly where players first met him. Waiting, life continues, and the player ultimately never comes back. Compared to later Bosmer characters, Fargoth also struggles to stand out. Morrowind introduces fascinating members of every race throughout its enormous world. Powerful mages, political leaders, skilled assassins, Fargoth possesses none of those distinctions. He remains an ordinary civilian. Perhaps that normality is exactly what makes him memorable to long-time fans. He represents the countless everyday people living ordinary lives beneath the shadow of extraordinary events. The Nerevarine eventually confronts Dagoth. Great houses wage political battles. The Tribunal faces divine crisis. Meanwhile, Fargoth continues worrying about his missing ring. His concerns never become less valid simply because greater conflicts exist elsewhere. Another reason players often forget Fargoth is because Morrowind itself constantly rewards exploration. Every new town introduces unfamiliar characters, guilds, cultures, quests. The game continuously encourages forward momentum. Returning to Seyda rarely feels necessary. Unlike later Elder Scrolls titles featuring Radiant systems or companions returning to earlier locations, Morrowind largely leaves its starting village behind. Fargoth quietly disappears beneath the weight of everything waiting beyond the horizon. His role in internet culture creates an interesting contrast. Within the Elder Scrolls community, Fargoth has become something of a legend. Memes, jokes, stories about stealing his gold. Many longtime fans recognize him instantly. Yet this recognition often stems less from his personality than from the shared experience surrounding him. He becomes symbolic. The nervous Bosma everyone robbed during their first playthrough. Ironically, this fame outside the game only highlights how little attention players usually pay to him inside it. There is also something wonderfully human about Fargoth's fears. He doesn't ask the player to slay monsters, recover legendary artifacts, or save the world. He simply wants his ring back. Later, he quietly hides his savings because he fears local thieves. These are remarkably small concerns compared to Morrowind's epic narrative. That scale difference reinforces his realism. Not everyone in Tamriel dreams of greatness. Most people simply want security. Fargoth embodies that beautifully. His relationship with Seyda also reinforces his forgotten status. Unlike Maik, who constantly travels, Fargoth never leaves. He belongs entirely to one tiny settlement. Should players never revisit the village, they effectively erase him from their own story. His world becomes frozen while theirs expands across an entire island. The contrast is striking. He remains rooted, and the player moves endlessly forward. Compared to opening NPCs in later Elder Scrolls games, Fargoth occupies a particularly interesting position. Oblivion quickly introduces the Emperor. Skyrim begins with Ralof or Hadvar during Alduin's attack. These characters remain closely tied to dramatic events. Fargoth does not. His introduction is intentionally modest. There are no dragons, no Daedric invasions, no prophecies. Only a nervous Bosma missing a ring. That understated beginning perfectly reflects Morrowind's slower storytelling, yet it also contributes to Fargoth being overshadowed almost immediately. Perhaps the saddest aspect of Fargoth's character is how little changes for him regardless of the player's choices. Return his ring, steal his gold, ignore him entirely. Eventually leave Seyda behind. Unlike major companions or faction leaders, he never receives dramatic development. Life simply continues. And there is something oddly poignant about that. Ultimately, Fargoth earns his place among the most ignored NPCs in all of the Elder Scrolls because he perfectly represents the ordinary people who quietly exist beneath the grand adventures players remember most. He welcomes countless players into Morrowind, teaches them some of the game's earliest mechanics, places his trust in a complete stranger, and then slowly fades into the background as the Nerevarines' journey grows larger and larger. Overshadowed by gods, prophecy, political intrigue, and ancient evils, Fargoth never asks for recognition. He remains exactly where players first found him, living a simple life in a tiny coastal village while legends are forged elsewhere. For many, he becomes nothing more than the Bosma with the missing ring or the unfortunate victim of an early game robbery. But beneath that simplicity lies one of Morrowind's most quietly effective pieces of world building. Because not everyone in Tamriel is destined to become a hero. Some people simply lose a ring, hide their savings in a tree stump, and hope the next traveller they meet is someone they can trust. And perhaps that's why, despite being one of the very first NPCs millions of players ever encounter, Fargoth remains one of the easiest characters in the entire Elder Scrolls series to leave behind. In a game like Skyrim, it's easy to overlook the quiet people. The world is filled with shouting Nords, storming battle mages, and ancient dragons clawing their way out of time. Cities burn, Jarls scheme, and you, the player, are usually at the centre of it all. But if you ever stop sprinting from one quest marker to the next, if you wander off the beaten path, sometimes the world lets you find something else. Something forgotten. And something small. Not magical, not dangerous, just quiet and strange. If you walk through the mountains, you will come across him, in his little shack, isolated in the hills. And that's what might make him the loneliest NPC in all of Skyrim. Froki's shack is exactly what it sounds like. a tiny wooden structure half collapsed and huddled against the cliffs in the southern mountains of Skyrim. It isn't near a road, it isn't near a town, it isn't even on the way to anything really. There's no marker, no reason to come here, just stone, snow, and silence. If you do find it, it's probably by accident. Maybe you were scaling the cliffs looking for the Shrine of Talos. Maybe you were chasing a fox through the trees. Maybe, like me, you were just bored of fast travelling and wanted to see what lived in the margins of the map. And then you see it. A shack, a fire, some smoke, a sign that someone actually still lives up here. Froki is an old Nord, grey-haired, worn. He greets you with suspicion, like someone who stopped trusting visitors a long time ago. He wears simple clothes, no armour, no rings. He's not a quest giver in the traditional sense. He doesn't beg for help or praise your accomplishments. He just sits near the fire watching the wind cut through the trees. But if you talk to him, if you really stay for a while, you'll learn that Froki used to be something more. A hunter, a soldier, a worshipper of the old gods. A man who once fought for Skyrim, but who gave up on it a long time ago. He's one of the only living followers of Kyne, the ancient goddess of the storm and sky, and he teaches her ways to his grandson, Hamming. But that's right, Froki isn't entirely alone, is he? But it still feels like he is. If you've ever played Skyrim from the start, Hamming might sound familiar. He's one of the first NPCs you ever meet, a child from Helgen who survives the dragon attack at the beginning of the game. You see him escape with his father as the town crumbles. And then nothing. His father disappears, his home is gone, and Hamming is never really mentioned again. Unless, of course, you find this shack. Because this is where he ended up, living with his grandfather in the middle of nowhere. No books, no toys, no friends, just a half-burnt shack, some hunting lessons, and the howling wind. Skyrim doesn't tell you what happened to his father. The game doesn't really care. And maybe that's what makes it worse, because it's not just Froki who's lonely, it's the boy too. Two forgotten characters stitched together by absence. And maybe that's why Froki always seems so angry. Froki doesn't like you. Not at first, anyway. He doesn't trust the companions, he doesn't believe in the 9 divines, and he especially doesn't believe in the Empire. To Froki, Skyrim lost its way when it forgot about the old gods, when it traded the wildness of Kyne for the bureaucracy of the divines. He sees the modern world as weak, corrupt, disconnected from the land. He speaks in quiet, judgmental tones, not bitter, exactly, just disappointed. It's easy to write him off as another cranky old Nord, but if you listen closely, Froki's anger is grief. He's mourning a Skyrim that no longer exists, a time when men lived in the mountains, prayed to the sky, and didn't need thrones or temples to find meaning. That world is gone, and so Froki left the world with it. Or maybe the world left him. If you earn Froki's respect, usually by showing interest in Kyne, he gives you a quest. But not a normal one, no kill this bandit or fetch this artifact. Instead, he tells you to visit Kyne's sacred shrines and hunt the guardian spirits that dwell there. It's a simple task, go to another remote hill, fight a ghost animal, and then return. But the journey takes you across the wildest parts of Skyrim, deep forests, hidden cliffs, forgotten glades. And every time you fight one of Kyne's guardians, you realise something. These aren't really evil spirits. They're not threats. They're sacred. They're symbols of the natural world, proud, powerful, and ancient. You're not killing monsters. You're proving that you understand them. And when you return to Froki, he doesn't cheer. He just nods. Like you've finally learned something he's known for decades. Talking about Froki's home, it isn't cozy. The walls are crooked, the floor is cracked, there's no food on the table, no clutter, no warmth. There are almost no visitors except for myself and other players. No signs of trade, no books, no notes, no letters. Froki doesn't even have 2 beds, one for him and one for his grandson. So I'm assuming they sleep in the one bed. But maybe Froki's shack wasn't meant to last. Maybe it was meant to be temporary, a place of exile, or pilgrimage, or mourning. But years passed, and the world didn't ask for him to return. So he didn't. That's the question that lingers long after you leave. Did Froki really choose this? Did he walk away from civilization because he believed in something greater? A forgotten god? A purer way of life? Or did he lose everything and build his life out of the ruins? We'll never really know, will we? Skyrim doesn't really give us any answer to this. Froki doesn't have a good backstory quest or a personal journal or a friend who speaks about him in town. He is utterly and completely disconnected from the rest of the game. And in a world where everything is usually tied together, from Daedric cults to court intrigues, that kind of disconnection is rare, because it almost feels real. People like Froki exist. People who lose faith in the world, who retreat, who vanish into the hills. Not because they hate people, but because they've been hurt by them too many times. Froki's not a villain. He's not even a hermit. He's just tired. Froki doesn't die in a grand battle. He doesn't leave behind a powerful weapon or a buried secret. When the game ends, he's still there. Still sitting by the fire, still raising a boy who lost his home. Still praying to a god no one remembers. And maybe that's what makes him the loneliest NPC in Skyrim. Not because he's alone, but because he's untouched and unclaimed by any major questline, any war, and any epic conclusion. He exists entirely outside the game's design, which means Froki isn't really here for the player. He's here for himself. Froki's shack isn't a dungeon. It's not a shrine. It's not even marked on most maps. It's just a shack, a house, in the mountains, slowly decaying under the snow. But it holds something that most places in Skyrim don't. Stillness. Not the quiet of peace, but the quiet of grief, of memory and of choice. Because Froki isn't a forgotten character. He's a character who chose to forget the world. And somehow, that's kind of more haunting. The wind never stops blowing around his home, the fire never quite warms the room, and the boy, Hamming, never says much of anything. But they're there, together, waiting for something that probably won't come. Maybe kind, maybe peace, maybe nothing. And as you leave Froki's shack and the snow begins to swallow the roof behind you, you might realise you weren't really meant to find him. But now that you have, you won't forget him. Skyrim is full of characters who demand your attention. Ulfric shouts his rebellion from Windhelm's throne. Maven Blackbriar casts her shadow across Riften. Even the smallest villagers, farmers, miners, hunters, usually serve some identifiable purpose in the vast clockwork of the game. And then there's Nafi, a beggar who lives on the edge of Ivarstead, in the ruins of his family's house, scraping by in dirt and despair. You don't find him unless you're looking, and if you do, the game itself seems unsure what to do with him. He is lonely, broken, and largely ignored, both by the town he lives near and by the narrative of Skyrim itself. Nafi is not just a side character, he's a wound in the world building, an NPC so isolated, so forgotten, that his very presence feels like a mistake, and yet he lingers. His life reduced to ashes, but why? Ivarstead is already a strange town, a waypoint between Whiterun and Riften. It is best known as the final stop before the 7,000 steps up to High Hrothgar. For most players, it's a pass-through, a place to grab supplies, listen to rumours, and then begin the climb to meet the Greybeards. But if you walk just outside of the town, across the bridge, and towards the riverbank, you'll notice something peculiar. A burnt-down house, collapsed, abandoned. Inside the ruins, you'll hear muttering, and then you'll see him, Nafi the beggar. He doesn't greet you like other NPCs, he doesn't stand tall, he doesn't have a job, doesn't contribute. Instead, he shuffles, mumbles, and begs. He's a man who has been hollowed out. He is in many ways the physical embodiment of absence. Nafi is not homeless by choice. His family's house burned down, leaving him destitute. His sister, Rhaeda, went missing and never returned, leaving him both orphaned and alone. The trauma shattered him, and when you meet him in the game, he is already too far gone. The villagers of Ivarstead know him, they pity him, in the way one might pity a stray dog, but no one truly ever helps him. He is tolerated but not embraced. The innkeepers will sometimes mention his state. The townsfolk shake their head, but no one offers him food or shelter or companionship. Skyrim is a land filled with tragedy, but Nafi is unique because his tragedy is not tied to prophecy, war, or gods. It is simple, domestic, and all too human. The story of a man who lost everything and in turn was left behind. If you talk to Nafi, he will mumble about his missing sister, Rhaeda. This triggers a small miscellaneous quest, the straw that broke. You're asked to search for Rhaeda. Her fate is bleak. You find a necklace by the river suggesting that she drowned. You return to Nafi with the news and he thanks you in his sort of broken way. That's it. That's the quest. No reward, no consequence, no major branching path. Just the quiet resolution of a man whose world is already over. Compared to the sprawling quest lines of Skyrim, the Civil War, the Dark Brotherhood, the College of Winterhold, Nafi's quest feels almost like a whisper, but perhaps that's the point. It is not about changing the world, it is about changing one's understanding of his loss. Still, the question lingers, why does Skyrim include this NPC at all? Most characters in Skyrim have a gameplay function. Shopkeepers sell goods, followers fight by your side, trainers teach skills. Even background NPCs serve to populate towns, flesh out culture, or connect to Radiant quests. But Nafi, he offers nothing. He cannot be married, recruited, or trained. His quest yields no material benefit. He doesn't even move from the ruins of his house. He is frozen in place, a relic of sorrow, existing only to remind players of what cannot be fixed. In this sense, he feels purposeless, and that purposelessness is precisely what makes him so disturbing. He's not just an NPC, he is a monument to futility. If you've joined the Dark Brotherhood, you encounter Nafi again, this time as a target. Astrid assigns you to kill Nafi. No justification, no backstory, no explanation. He is simply just marked for death. This transforms Nafi from a forgotten beggar into one of Skyrim's most unsettling moral dilemmas. Do you kill a broken man already destroyed by life simply because you were told to? When you approach him, he doesn't resist. He doesn't even seem to understand. He just wanders, starts running, muttering obliviously. Striking him down feels crueler than killing any bandit or soldier. But the game doesn't care. The Dark Brotherhood rewards you all the same. His death changes nothing. His absence barely even registers. It is as if the world of Skyrim, like the people of Ivarstead, have already forgotten him. Nafi's existence raises fascinating questions about Skyrim's design. Why include such a character? Why give him no real role, no meaningful quest, or no redemption? The answer may lie in contrast. Skyrim is full of chosen ones, heroes, villains, and gods. By comparison, Nafi is a reminder of the people who slip through the cracks. He embodies the theme of isolation, showing what happens to those who are too small, too powerless to be swept up in prophecy. His placement in Ivarstead is deliberate. Travellers pass through here on their way to High Hrothgar to seek enlightenment, to hear destiny call. Nafi sits just outside of that, close enough to be seen but far enough to be ignored. In a game about fate, Nafi has none. Perhaps the most haunting aspect of Nafi is not his backstory or his role in quests, but simply how alone he feels. When you speak to him, there are no background voices cheering, no bustling market sounds, no friends approaching, just the wind, the ruin of his house, and his muttering. The silence is louder than any dragon's roar. It communicates despair in a way combat never could. Players who stumble upon Nafi often leave unsettled. They remember him not because he was important, but because he was forgotten. Skyrim has its share of outcasts and broken souls. Not Beard in Kynes Grove, the madman in the Reach, even Cicero the Fool. But all of them have connections to quests, to factions, to larger themes. Nafi has none. He's not a mad jester tied to prophecy. He's not a bandit hiding from the law. He is not a mage who dabbled too far. He is simply a man destroyed by grief. And in this way, he is more realistic than most NPCs. His suffering isn't epic, it's personal, which is exactly why it hits harder. If Skyrim is about choices, then Nafi represents the illusion of choice. You can help him find closure about his sister, you can kill him for the Brotherhood, or you can ignore him entirely. No matter what you do, the outcome feels empty. There's no celebration, no recognition, no reward. His life begins and ends in quiet misery. And maybe that's the message. Not every story in Skyrim is one of glory. Some are about loss, some are about despair, and some are about lives so small they slip through the cracks. Nafi represents the forgotten people of Tamriel, the ones who don't matter to history, but still exist in the margins. What lingers most about Nafi is not his dialogue or his quest, but the guilt he plants in other players. Do you kill him and feel like a monster? Do you leave him alive knowing he'll continue to suffer alone? Do you ignore him and pretend you never saw him? None of these options feel good, and maybe that's the genius of his design. Nafi is not there to serve you, he's there to remind you that some wounds never heal. Nafi is, without question, the most isolated NPC in Skyrim. He has no allies, no purpose, no impact on the world. His only legacy is the uncomfortable silence he leaves behind. In a game filled with heroes, villains, dragons, and gods, this beggar is the reminder of what lies outside the spotlight. He is the human cost of a harsh world. He is what happens when no one cares, and that perhaps is why players remember him. Not because he mattered, but because he didn't. Skyrim is a land filled with noise. The clash of steel, the roars of dragons, and the ceaseless murmur of its people trying to survive in a frozen land. But far beyond that noise, beyond the cities and roads and reach of Jarls, there are places where silence reigns completely. One such place is Cliffside Retreat, a small cabin perched on a cliff southwest of Solitude, seemingly forgotten by both gods and men. It is one of the few locations in Skyrim that still feels alive, and yet utterly untouched. Inside lives a single woman, a nameless Nord hunter, alone but unbroken. She has no quest to offer, no dialogue of importance, no grand role in the fate of Skyrim. She simply exists, breathing quietly in the still air, tending to her craft and surviving one day at a time. Cliffside Retreat and its lone inhabitant together embody the forgotten edges of Skyrim. Not the ruins of the past or the victims of tragedy, but the living solitude of those who have chosen a quieter life, far from the chaos of the world. Cliffside Retreat is exactly what its name suggests, a retreat from everything. It stands high in the rocky wilds of Harfinger, its small chimney puffing faint smoke into the cold mountain air. To reach it, one must navigate a narrow, twisting path surrounded by wolves and bears, with no signposts or civilization to guide the way. The cabin itself is humble, a single room with a cooking pot, a bed and a few animal pelts, and the faint smell of smoke and pine. It's the kind of place easy to overlook, yet impossible to forget once found. The woman who lives here is often outside when you arrive, bow in hand, scanning the horizon for game. She greets no one, she neither attacks nor welcomes you. She simply exists, a reminder that not everyone in Skyrim seeks adventure or glory. Some seek only peace, however fragile. The Hunter of Cliffside Retreat has no name in the game's records. She is simply Hunter, a woman of few words and fewer needs. She hunts for food, crafts from the land, and lives off whatever she can gather from the wilderness. She is not aligned with any faction, not tied to any quest. She is one of Skyrim's rarest types of NPCs. A person who exists without reason in terms of the game's structure, but with great reason in the world's logic. She is the embodiment of Skyrim's quiet resilience. Many players overlook her entirely, Others find her and assume she has a quest, a story, a hidden dialogue option, but there is none. When you speak to her, she offers the same brief, functional words as any hunter in the wild. And then, when you leave, she returns to her solitude, unbothered, unchanged. That makes her presence hauntingly beautiful. In a land obsessed with prophecy, her existence is purely human. She is not meant to change the world. She's simply trying to live in it. It's easy to mistake isolation for tragedy, but in Cliffside Retreat, the silence feels intentional. Unlike other remote NPCs who have been stranded or cursed, this hunter seems at peace with her seclusion. Her cabin is neat, her tools well kept, her life orderly. The sense is not of exile, but of choice. She chose to leave behind the bustle of the cities, the danger of politics, and the noise of other people. There is dignity in that choice. While most of Skyrim's people cling to the protection of walls and guards, she stands alone in the wild, surviving without need for anyone. It's a life that is difficult, dangerous, and yet deeply authentic, the purest reflection of Skyrim's harsh beauty. In a world where dragons scorch towns and war tears apart families, perhaps solitude is the only sane response. Harfinger is one of Skyrim's most rugged regions. Its cliffs drop into misty valleys. Its forests echo with the calls of predators. The air is sharp, the light is thin, and the sound of the sea below constant. Cliffside Retreat sits right in the midst of this harsh beauty. From her porch, the hunter can see miles of wilderness, jagged peaks, rolling fog, and the faint glimmer of solitude far in the distance. But that city may as well be another world. The isolation here is physical and spiritual. It's not just that few visit, it's that few could. The path to her home is treacherous and unmarked, guarded by wolves and trolls. It's not designed for travellers, it's designed to keep them out. And so the hunter remains apart, existing in the narrow space between civilization and oblivion, where one misstep could send her tumbling into the rocks below. And yet she endures for all this time. In most of Skyrim, every NPC exists for a reason. A quest, a piece of lore, a task. But the Hunter of Cliffside Retreat has no such function. You can sell items to her, or give information, but that's about it. She's not part of any questline or hidden narrative. And that is precisely what makes her remarkable. She represents the parts of the world that don't revolve around the player. The places and people that exist simply because the world would feel emptier without them. Her life, in a sense, gives Skyrim its soul. Without characters like her, nameless, quiet, and living entirely apart from the drama of dragons and politics, the world would feel staged. But because she exists, the illusion of a breathing world becomes real. She hunts, eats, sleeps, and survives. Not for you, not for a quest, but because that's what she does. That is her purpose, even if the game doesn't call it one. Despite her apparent contentment, there's an undeniable melancholy in her life. Skyrim's wilderness is not a kind place. The nights are long, the predators relentless, and the winters cruel. When you stand inside her cabin and hear the wind battering against the walls, it's hard not to imagine what those nights must be like. The loneliness, the fear, the unending silence. A single sound outside could mean a deer or a saber cat. Every decision becomes a matter of survival. And yet she stays. That resilience, quiet, uncelebrated, and entirely human, is what makes her one of Skyrim's most powerful characters. She doesn't slay dragons, but she defeats the cold every morning. She doesn't shout through them, but she endures storms. Her story isn't told through quests, but through a continued existence in a world designed to crush the weak. There is, however, a strange peace in her isolation. In a land constantly torn apart by war and prophecy, she has escaped it all. She owes allegiance to no Jarl. She pays no taxes. No soldiers march past her door. The troubles of the world end at her cliff's edge. In that sense, she is freer than any other person in Skyrim. Her solitude is not punishment, it is liberation. She lives in balance with the land, untouched by the greed and violence that define so much of the province. Perhaps she knows something the rest of Skyrim does not. That to live quietly is sometimes the greatest rebellion of all. It's easy to imagine a future where the Dragonborn turns Cliffside Retreat into something more. Not a fort or a settlement, but a home. The cabin's location makes it perfect for peace, overlooking breathtaking vistas, shielded from roads and politics alike. With little work, it could become a sanctuary, a hunting lodge or a refuge for those wary to Skyrim's endless conflict. Perhaps even the hunter herself could become a companion or a teacher, passing on her quiet wisdom about the land, the animals, and the survival herself. Her story doesn't need tragedy, it deserves continuation. But for now, she remains what she has always been, a ghost of the living world, content to be forgotten. In a land obsessed with glory, she embodies the rarest kind of power, the strength to live unseen, the courage to be alone, and the grace to endure without recognition. Despite her strength, it's impossible not to feel that the world has forgotten her. No one comes to visit, no one mentions her in passing. She will never be remembered in songs or books. When the dragon passes by, she might exchange a few brief words, but then the player moves on, and she remains, her life unchanging. And perhaps that is her tragedy. She lives in one of the most beautiful and secluded spots in Skyrim, but beauty without companionship becomes a kind of curse. The cliffs, the trees, and the sky are her only witnesses. If she ever once lived in a city or had a family, that part of her life has been buried beneath years of solitude. Now there is only the hunt, only the silence, only the wind through the pines. Cliffside Retreat stands unchanged, its lone chimney still smoking against the cold. The hunter moves through her days like a shadow, each one blending into the next. She will never be written into the history books, nor sung of by bards. Yet in her quiet endurance, she represents something far greater than any legend. The soul of Skyrim itself, harsh, silent, beautiful, and unyielding. The most deserted NPC and place in all of Skyrim are not tragic because they are forgotten. They are powerful because they continue, even when no one is watching. Skyrim is filled with people, hundreds of them. Farmers, guards, innkeepers, mages, bandits, children who yell at you like you stole their lunch money. Each one of them exists for a reason, or at least they try to. Some give you quests, some sell you potions, some dramatically die in front of you to prove that this dungeon means business. And then there's Snorrid, a man so unremarkable, so untouched by questlines, so entirely devoid of purpose, that he accidentally becomes one of the most fascinating NPCs in the game. Snorrid doesn't roam the roads of Skyrim. He doesn't stand out in the wilderness, waiting for players to stumble across him like some forgotten side character in a B plot that never got written. He lives in solitude. More specifically, he sleeps in the East Empire Company warehouse, a restricted access zone you're not supposed to enter unless you're on official business, which you probably aren't. And that's fitting, because Snorrid doesn't want to be seen. You'll find him curled up on a bedroll, tucked away among crates and clutter. He doesn't patrol, he doesn't eat, doesn't work, he just sleeps, and sleeps, and sleeps. Like a man trying to speedrun through life with the fast travel button permanently held down. The only time he ever gets up is if he's attacked, at which point he'll fight back, briefly, then return to unconsciousness, metaphorically and probably literally. And if you do try to talk to him, he gives you the warm, friendly greeting of,
"You're not supposed to be in here."
That's it? That's the extent of Snorrid's engagement with the world. Here's the thing. Almost every other NPC in Skyrim is part of a machine. A radiant system, a faction quest, a city's ecosystem. They fit in the game's design like gears in a clock. Snorrid is like a marble in a blender. He doesn't move, he doesn't connect to the world in any real way. If you removed him from the game, I bet 99.9% of players would never even notice. He's not a character, he's the absence of one, which is weirdly bold when you think about it. In a game about shouting dragons out of the sky and becoming the champion of 16 different gods, Snorrid is just trying to get through the day. He's like an anti-hero, but not in the edgy, morally grey way. More like an anti-entity, if that makes any sense at all. He defies narrative, and maybe, just maybe, that's the narrative Bethesda were going for. Okay, so maybe he's just a dock worker, right? He's in a warehouse, maybe he's off shift. Nope. Snorid has no job routines at all. No AI packages for hauling crates or clocking in at the East Empire Company. He's not listed in the employee registry in any meaningful way beyond existing. You don't see him hauling anything. He never interacts with anyone. There are NPCs in the warehouse who do go about their business. Snorid is not one of them. He has a job title, technically. Technically, he's a Nord employee, but that's about it. He is, in the most literal sense, an employee who has never worked a day in his life. He has no dialogue trees, no duties, no story hooks, no ambitions. Snorid is not a participant in Skyrim's economy. He is a bystander in its sleep cycle. But again, he has a name, and in Skyrim, a name actually means something. Right? Let's do a lore check. Open the wikis, comb through the UESP, look at game files, try to find a journal, a letter, a passing reference in someone else's quest. Anything to tell us about Snorid. Well, if you happen to do that, you won't find anything at all. There's no backstory, no implication of a backstory, no hints that a backstory might have once been drafted and then deleted. Snorid exists without context. He's not mentioned by any other NPC. He doesn't write, doesn't speak, doesn't appear to age. He just is. In a city filled with corruption, military tension, and royal politics, Snorid is none of it. He is the most background character imaginable, which somehow makes him stand out even more. Let's give Bethesda some credit. What if Snorid is deliberate? What if he's meant to represent something? A developer joke? An artistic metaphor? A weird social experiment to see how many people would sneak into a restricted area and find a man taking a decades-long nap? There's something almost performance art about it. You have hundreds of characters fighting and yelling and dying to give the game its drama and texture, and then one guy who's just sleeping on the job. He doesn't need your help, he doesn't want your attention, he doesn't want to be awake. He is the silent witness to a world in motion. Skyrim is tearing itself apart, literally, and Snorid's just hoping it'll quiet down before his next REM cycle. Honestly, he might be the smartest one in the whole province. Here's what's wild. Despite doing nothing at all, Snorid has a small but devoted fan base. You'll find posts about him on forums. Who is this guy in the warehouse? Why is there a Nord just sleeping in solitude? What's the whole point of Snorid? Some players even roleplay explanations for him. He's a smuggler in hiding, he's cursed to sleep forever, he's the last honest worker in the East Empire Company. Snorid is a canvas, a void you can probably project meaning onto. Because that's the thing. In a game where everything is designed to pull your attention, a character who asks for none of it becomes oddly magnetic. He's not trying to impress you, he's just here, like a box or a barrel or a goat that wandered indoors and nobody wants to deal with. Snorid is part of the world, not part of your story. And that is what makes him unforgettable. Let's zoom out. Snorid is, in many ways, a weird commentary on NPCs themselves. What does it mean to be a character in a world built entirely around the player? If every other NPC exists for you, to teach you something, to fight you, to quest with you, then Snorid's refusal to participate is almost revolutionary. He's not broken, he's resistant. He's the first NPC who's looked at the player, shrugged and said, "Nah, I'm good." Maybe he knows he's in the game. Maybe he's achieved a higher level of awareness. He's the NPC who realized the futility of it all. While others chase glory, fame, dragon-slaying titles, and enchanted swords, Snorid has reached enlightenment. He is free. Or, maybe someone just forgot to delete him during development. But let me dream, I don't know. Let's be honest. Not all of us are the Dragonborn. Most of us are, Snorid. We stay in bed longer than we should. We try not to attract attention, we have no grand quest. You don't shout people off mountains or become head of the East Empire Company in a week. We just exist, watching things happen around us, occasionally wondering if you're supposed to do something else, rather than watch a video about a Skyrim NPC who does nothing at all. Snorid is the mirror we rarely want to look into. He's what happens when a game built on power fantasies leaves a crack open for ordinary silence. And somehow, the silence is louder than any dragon shout. He doesn't fight the world, he endures it. Quietly and alone. Maybe that's depressing, but maybe it's really not. Maybe it's a kind of comfort. Because if Snorid can find peace in just sleeping in a drafty warehouse, maybe we all can as well. Snorid is an NPC who does nothing. Not metaphorically, not hyperbolically, literally nothing. No quests, no fights, no purpose, and no arc. And yet, he stays in your mind. Because in a world full of distractions, Snorid offers stillness. In a province that demands your attention, he gives you nothing to look at. And somehow that makes you stare even harder. In a game that begs you to be the hero, Snorid is a man who never asks you to be anything. And maybe he was a mistake, a leftover asset, an unsigned dialogue tree that wandered into the warehouse and never left. Or maybe, just maybe, he's Skyrim's quietest masterpiece. The only NPC in all of Skyrim that does nothing. And somehow that means, quite literally, everything. The Elder Scrolls has always been at its best when it makes the world feel bigger than the player. While we spend hundreds of hours chasing prophecies, defeating Daedric princes and changing the fate of entire provinces, countless ordinary people continue living their own lives in the background. Some, like Maik the Liar, are easy to miss because they're constantly wandering the roads of Tamriel. Others, like Fargoth, are left behind the moment our adventure truly begins. And then there are the NPCs like Sickly Bernice, whose stories are so quiet and so grounded that many players never notice them at all. These characters may never become heroes or villains, but they give Tamriel its humanity. They remind us that every city, village and roadside has people with their own routines, struggles and personalities, even if the player only meets them for a few moments. In many ways, they're the reason the world feels so believable. Because sometimes the most memorable characters aren't the ones standing at the centre of history. They're the ones quietly living in its shadow. The Elder Scrolls is filled with powerful characters. Legendary warriors, ancient vampires, immortal mages, Daedric champions, and rulers whose actions have shaped the history of Tamriel itself. But raw strength alone isn't what makes an NPC truly dangerous. Some possess unimaginable magical abilities. Others command entire armies, manipulate kingdoms from the shadows, or wield artifacts capable of changing the fate of the world. A few have been challenged by the gods themselves, leaving behind legacies that continue to influence Tamriel centuries later. But there's a much bigger question we have to ask. Which characters are truly the most dangerous? Whether it's their power, influence, intelligence, or the destruction they've unleashed, these NPCs stand above almost everyone else in the Elder Scrolls universe. From ancient dragon priests to godlike beings and legendary heroes, these are some of the most powerful and dangerous NPCs in all of the Elder Scrolls. When discussing the most dangerous NPCs in all of the Elder Scrolls, it's important to look beyond simple combat ability. A truly dangerous character isn't just someone who can defeat the player in a fight. There's someone whose ambitions, resources, intelligence, and willingness to reshape the world make them a threat to entire civilizations. Few characters embody those qualities more completely than Lord Harkon. Introduced as the primary antagonist of Skyrim's Dawnguard expansion, Harkon is far more than an exceptionally powerful vampire. He is the immortal ruler of Castle Volkihar, patriarch of one of Tamriel's oldest vampire bloodlines, and a direct servant of Molag Bal, the Daedric Prince of Domination. Unlike ordinary vampires content with feeding in secret, Harkon dreams on a far grander scale. His goal is nothing less than permanently blotting out the sun through the power of Auriel's bow and the tyranny of the sun prophecy, allowing vampires to rule Tamriel without fear of daylight. Had he succeeded, the consequences would have reached every corner of the continent. That enormous ambition, combined with centuries of accumulated power and an army of supernatural followers, makes Lord Harkon one of the most dangerous individuals in the Elder Scrolls universe. What immediately separates Harkon from most villains is patience. Many antagonists pursue power over months, or even years. Harkon has centuries. He is ancient even by vampire standards. During that time, he has built influence, expanded his clan, mastered powerful forms of magic, studied forgotten prophecies, and waited for exactly the right opportunity. Immortality fundamentally changes what someone can accomplish. Time ceases becoming a limitation. Mistakes can be corrected, knowledge accumulates endlessly. Every century potentially makes Harkon more dangerous than the last. His origins explain much of that ambition. Long before becoming a vampire lord, he ruled as a powerful king. According to his own account, he willingly sacrificed 1,000 innocent people in a ritual dedicated to Molag Bal. The reward was immortality. Unlike victims transformed unwillingly into vampires, Harkon actively chose damnation in exchange for power. That decision reveals something essential about his character. He has never viewed mortality as an obstacle. Only results matter. If unimaginable suffering achieves his objectives, he accepts the cost without hesitation. That willingness alone distinguishes him from many other Elder Scrolls antagonists. Power gained through sacrifice often comes at a terrible cost. Harkon embraces that cost. His connection to Molag Bal further amplifies his threat. Molag Bal is not merely another Daedric prince. He embodies domination, enslavement, corruption, and the complete destruction of free will. Receiving power directly from such a being elevates Harkon far beyond ordinary vampires. His transformation into a vampire lord grants abilities capable of overwhelming experienced warriors and mages alike. Flight, powerful blood magic, summoning gargoyles, draining life directly from opponents, transforming into an enormous winged monstrosity. Very few mortals could hope to survive such an encounter. Yet Harkon's greatest strength isn't physical power, it's leadership. Castle Volkihar functions as far more than an isolated fortress. It serves as the center of an entire vampire civilization. Powerful, pure-blooded vampires, thralls, deathhounds, gargoyles, specialized alchemists, court advisors all operate beneath Harkon's authority. Unlike many monsters who hunt alone, Harkon commands an organized hierarchy. His followers obey him with remarkable loyalty. That structure dramatically increases his danger. Killing one vampire solves very little. Defeating the Lord, directing all of them, becomes exponentially more difficult. The tyranny of the sun prophecy demonstrates the extraordinary scale of Harkon's thinking. Most vampire rulers throughout fantasy simply seek territory, influence, survival. Harkon aims considerably higher. He wants to permanently alter the natural order itself. By using Auriel's bow alongside the blood of a daughter of Cold Harbor, he intends to extinguish the sun's influence forever. This is not conquest of a kingdom. It is environmental transformation affecting an entire continent. Every city, every village, every ecosystem, every ordinary person. The implications become almost unimaginable. Agriculture would collapse. Religious traditions centered around light would be shaken. Normal civilization would fundamentally change. All because one vampire king refused to accept daylight. What makes his plan particularly dangerous is that it isn't completely impossible. The prophecy possesses genuine magical legitimacy. Auriel's bow already exists. Serana carries the necessary bloodline. The ingredients are real. Harkon isn't pursuing fantasy, he's pursuing an achievable objective. That realism makes him considerably more threatening than villains chasing impossible dreams. His relationship with Serana also reveals another disturbing aspect of his personality. Despite being her father, Harkon consistently values prophecy above family. He manipulates, threatens, ultimately attempts to kill his own daughter. Personal relationships mean nothing once they interfere with ambition. That emotional detachment makes him extraordinarily difficult to predict. Love cannot restrain him. Compassion cannot persuade him. Everything becomes secondary to power. Even his wife eventually abandons the castle because she recognizes how dangerous Harkon has become. The fact that his own family fears him says a great deal. His magical abilities also deserve equal recognition. Harkon isn't merely a physically powerful vampire lord. He is also an accomplished practitioner of destructive and blood-based magic. Throughout the final confrontation, he combines devastating spells with supernatural transformations. He constantly adapts, teleports, summons reinforcements, absorbs health, creates magical barriers. The fight demonstrates centuries of accumulated experience. Players aren't facing an ordinary spellcaster. They're confronting someone who has spent lifetimes refining his abilities. Compared to other major Elder Scrolls villains, Harkon occupies a fascinating position. He lacks the divine scale of Dagoth or Alduin, yet he arguably feels more grounded, more immediate. His plans affect ordinary people directly. People can easily imagine Tamriel beneath permanent darkness. The threat feels tangible, personal. Perhaps that accessibility makes him more frightening. You don't need to understand cosmic metaphysics to appreciate why eliminating the sun would be catastrophic. Castle Volkihar itself further reinforces his danger. The fortress appears nearly impenetrable, situated upon an isolated island protected by supernatural guardians hidden from casual travelers. The environment perfectly complements Harkon's rule. Every corridor reminds visitors they have entered enemy territory. The castle isn't merely a home, it's a military stronghold, one specifically designed to protect one of Tamriel's oldest vampire bloodlines. His charisma often goes overlooked as well. Harkon doesn't immediately attack the Dragonborn. He negotiates, offers gifts, promises power. Like many truly dangerous leaders, he understands persuasion. Violence becomes only one tool among many. His offer to transform the player into a vampire lord has tempted countless players over the years. That ability to recruit rather than simply destroy reflects genuine intelligence. He recognizes potential allies, even temporary ones. There is also remarkable symbolism surrounding Harkon's obsession with the sun. Vampires traditionally survive by avoiding daylight. Harkon refuses to accept limitation. Rather than adapting himself, he attempts to reshape reality. That mindset perfectly summarizes his character. The world must change, not him. Few ambitions reveal greater arrogance or greater danger. His downfall ultimately stems from that same arrogance. Harkon consistently underestimates others. Serana, his wife, the Dawnguard, the Dragonborn himself. He assumes power guarantees victory. Ironically, that belief becomes his greatest weakness. Without overwhelming confidence, he might have succeeded. Instead, obsession gradually blinds him to genuine threats. Even so, defeating Harkon requires extraordinary efforts. Only the Dragonborn, one of the most powerful mortals in Tamriel, stands a realistic chance of stopping him. That fact alone demonstrates his incredible danger. Ordinary soldiers could never accomplish that task. Entire armies would struggle. It takes a legendary hero wielding Ariel's bow to bring his reign to an end. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of Harkon is how believable his rise to power feels within Elder Scrolls lore. Ancient ruler Daedric packed immortality, centuries of preparation, political manipulation, forbidden magic, everything develops logically. He doesn't become dangerous overnight. He becomes dangerous because every century quietly increases his capabilities. Ultimately, Lord Harkon earns his place among the most dangerous NPCs in all of the Elder Scrolls, not simply because he is one of its strongest vampires, but because he combines virtually every quality that defines a truly catastrophic antagonist. Immense supernatural power, limitless patience, strategic intelligence, absolute ruthlessness, an organized army, a nearly impenetrable fortress, direct ties to one of the most malevolent Daedric princes, and an ambition capable of permanently changing the natural order of Tamriel itself. Unlike villains satisfied with personal wealth or regional conquest, Harkon seeks to reshape the entire world according to his desires, regardless of the suffering required to achieve it. He sacrifices innocence without hesitation, manipulates his own family, commands unwavering loyalty from one of Tamriel's oldest vampire clans, and pursues an ancient prophecy with relentless determination. Even in defeat, his legacy endures through the Volkihar bloodline and the terrifying reminder of how close Tamriel came to existing beneath an eternal light. For all of those reasons, Lord Harkon stands not merely as one of Skyrim's greatest villains, but as one of the single most dangerous individuals ever to walk the world of the Elder Scrolls. Some characters in the Elder Scrolls become dangerous because they possess immense physical strength. Others command powerful armies or master ancient forms of magic. Dagoth is different. His danger comes from the terrifying combination of all three, amplified by divine power and an unwavering belief that he alone is destined to reshape Tamriel. Long before the events of the Elder Scrolls Morrowind, Dagoth was once known as Vorin Dagoth, a trusted member of the House Dagoth and an ally of the legendary Tribunal during the War of the First Council. But after coming into contact with the Heart of Lorkhan beneath Red Mountain, everything changed. The Heart granted him extraordinary power, immortality, and an almost godlike influence over an island. Over thousands of years, Dagoth transformed from a respected Chimmer lord into one of the most dangerous beings Tamriel had ever faced. Unlike many villains whose ambitions are limited to kingdoms or provinces, Dagoth sought nothing less than the complete rebirth of the world according to his own vision. He intended to overthrow the Tribunal, drive out the Empire, awaken the giant Numidium, known as a Kulakan, spread the supernatural blight across Morrowind, and ultimately establish himself as the divine ruler of a new age. It was an ambition so vast that, had it succeeded, the political and spiritual landscape of Tamriel would have been changed forever. Perhaps the most frightening aspect of Dagoth is that he genuinely believes he is saving the world. Unlike villains driven purely by greed or revenge, Dagoth sees himself as a liberator. He speaks with confidence, with certainty, with absolute conviction that his vision represents the future. That makes him incredibly persuasive. He doesn't consider himself evil. He believes everyone else simply fails to understand what must be done. That mindset creates a far more unpredictable enemy than someone motivated by simple hatred, because compromise becomes impossible. You cannot negotiate with someone convinced they are already right. The source of Dagoth's power lies beneath Red Mountain. The Heart of Lorkhan is one of the single most important artifacts in all of Elder Scrolls lore, a fragment of the missing god himself. Its divine energy transcends ordinary magic. While the Tribunal used Kagranak's tools to draw power from the heart, Dagoth formed an even stranger connection. His existence gradually becomes intertwined with it. As long as the heart remained intact, destroying Dagoth permanently proved almost impossible. He could be defeated temporarily, but never truly eliminated. Immortality on that scale fundamentally changes the balance of power. Time ceases becoming an obstacle. Failure becomes temporary. Eventually, every opponent grows old. Dagoth simply waits, his patience rivals that of the greatest Daedric princes. The sixth house demonstrates another reason Dagoth ranks among Tamriel's most dangerous figures. Unlike many powerful individuals who operate alone, he inspires extraordinary loyalty. The sixth house cult spreads quietly throughout Morrowind. Its members willingly abandon ordinary life. They worship him as a living god. Many become fanatics, others succumb to horrifying physical transformations. Yet they rarely question their devotion. Their loyalty stems not only from belief, but from supernatural influence as well. Dagoth doesn't simply recruit followers, he changes them. That ability to reshape minds makes him dangerous long before armies ever march. Then there is the Blight. Few threats in Elder Scrolls history spread as insidiously. Originating from Red Mountain, the Blight functions as both disease and supernatural corruption. It weakens bodies, distorts minds, transforms wildlife, creates horrifying monsters. Entire regions become nearly uninhabitable beneath its influence. Travel becomes increasingly dangerous, communities begin collapsing. Unlike conventional warfare, the Blight doesn't distinguish between soldiers and civilians. Everyone becomes vulnerable. Its spread quietly demonstrates how Dagoth wages war. He doesn't merely conquer territory, he infects reality itself. The Corporus disease elevates that horror even further. At first glance, Corporus appears almost miraculous. Those afflicted cease aging, many become effectively immortal, yet immortality arrives alongside grotesque mutation. Victims gradually lose their humanity, bodies twist into monstrous forms, minds deteriorate, identity slowly disappears. Dagoth offers eternal life, but strips away everything making life meaningful. Perhaps no weapon better represents his philosophy. Power always comes with devastating cost. One of Dagoth's greatest ambitions revolves around a Kulikan, sometimes described as the second Numidium. This colossal brass construct represents one of the most terrifying projects ever attempted in Tamriel. The original Numidium already altered history itself. Dagoth intended to create another. Empowered by the heart of Lorcan, under his complete control, the implications become staggering. A divine machine capable of reshaping nations, perhaps even reality. Fortunately, the project never reaches completion. Had it succeeded, stopping Dagoth may have become impossible. His relationship with the Tribunal also reveals remarkable complexity. Unlike straightforward rivalries, theirs spans millennia. Friendship transformed into betrayal. Trust became hatred. Each side believes the other corrupted the Chimmer people's future. This shared history makes their conflict deeply personal. Dagoth isn't simply opposing political enemies. He's confronting former allies whose decisions changed the course of history. That emotional dimension gives his character unusual depth. Even his dialogue reflects this complexity. Throughout Morrowind, Dagoth speaks calmly, politely, almost respectfully. He welcomes the Neverine, invites conversation, discusses philosophy. Rarely does he descend into mindless rage. That composure makes him considerably more intimidating. He never needs to shout. Confidence replaces intimidation. He genuinely believes victory is inevitable. Compared to Harkon, the contrast becomes fascinating. Harkon seeks to reshape Tamriel through a single prophetic event. Dagoth builds an entirely new civilization beneath Red Mountain. One relies upon vampires, the other upon divine corruption. Both threaten continents. Dagoth simply operates upon an even larger historical scale. His influence extends into religion, culture, disease, politics, and mythology simultaneously. The environment surrounding Red Mountain perfectly complements his character. Ash storms constantly rage across the landscape. Visibility remains poor. Creatures become increasingly hostile. The closer players approach Dagoth, the more corrupted the world appears. It feels as though reality itself rejects ordinary existence. Very few Elder Scrolls antagonists influence their surroundings so completely. Red Mountain ceases feeling like geography, and it becomes an extension of Dagoth himself. His House Ash vampires further reinforce this theme. These ancient servants possess incredible strength, yet their appearances reveal terrible corruption. Power and decay exist side by side. Everything serving Dagoth reflects his worldview. Imperfection transformed into superiority. Suffering interpreted as evolution. Normal standards of beauty and health become meaningless. Only devotion matters. Another aspect often overlooked in Dagoth's strategic intelligence is that he does not immediately declare open war against Tamriel. Instead, he prepares. He expands the Sixth House secretly. He develops Akulikan. He allows the Blight to spread gradually. He waits for opportunities. This patience makes him extraordinarily dangerous. Impulsive villains often defeat themselves. Dagoth nearly succeeds precisely because he understands preparation. The Neverine arrives at exactly the right moment. Any later, events might have unfolded very differently. His influence over dreams deserves special attention as well. The so-called dreamers experience visions calling them towards the Sixth House. Sleep itself becomes another battlefield. People awaken changed, obsessed, unable to ignore the whispers. That subtle manipulation creates extraordinary psychological horror. Dagoth reaches people without ever meeting them. Distance offers no protection. Even unconsciousness becomes vulnerable. There is also profound tragedy beneath his transformation. Vorin Dagoth was not always a monster. He was once respected, trusted, a leader among his people. His corruption unfolded gradually through divine influence and unimaginable power. Whether any part of the original man truly survives remains open to interpretation. That ambiguity strengthens his character considerably. Players aren't simply confronting evil. They're confronting what happens when extraordinary power slowly consumes extraordinary ambition. Ultimately, Dagoth earns his place among the most dangerous NPCs in all of the Elder Scrolls because virtually every aspect of his existence threatens the stability of Tamriel. He commands fanatical followers, spreads supernatural disease, manipulates dreams, wields divine power drawn directly from the heart of Lorcan, builds a second Numidium capable of changing history itself, and pursues these ambitions with limitless patience, remarkable intelligence, and absolute certainty that he is destined to succeed. Unlike many villains who seek destruction for its own sake, Dagoth genuinely believes he is creating a better future. That unwavering conviction makes him infinitely more dangerous, because he never questions his own righteousness. Every atrocity becomes justified. Every sacrifice becomes necessary. Every victim becomes another step toward the world he imagined. It ultimately takes the Neverine, the destruction of Kagranak's enchantments, and the severing of the heart's power to finally end his reign. Yet even in defeat, Dagoth remains one of the defining figures in Elder Scrolls history. A reminder that the greatest threats are often not those who seek to destroy the world, but those who sincerely believe only they deserve to remake it. Among all the dangerous individuals in the Elder Scrolls, very few possess the ability to threaten an entire continent without ever leading a conventional army. Mankar Camoran proves that absolute conviction can be just as destructive as overwhelming magical power. As the founder and spiritual leader of the mythic Dawn, Mankar stands at the very heart of the Elder Scrolls Oblivion. While Mehrunes Dagon is undoubtedly the ultimate force behind the Oblivion crisis, it is Mankar who makes that catastrophe possible. Without his planning, his manipulation, and his fanatical devotion, Dagon's invasion of Tamriel would never have progressed beyond scattered Daedric incursions. Mankar spends years quietly building one of the most dangerous cults in the history of the Empire, recruiting followers from every level of society, acquiring forbidden knowledge, stealing the Amulet of Kings, orchestrating the assassination of Emperor Uriel Septim, and ultimately shattering the barrier separating Nirn from Oblivion itself. Unlike many Elder Scrolls villains who rely primarily on personal strength, Mankar weaponizes belief. He convinces thousands of ordinary people to willingly destroy the civilization they live in, making him one of the most dangerous manipulators Tamriel has ever known. Perhaps the most frightening thing about Mankar is that he never presents himself as a tyrant. He presents himself as a prophet. Everything he does is framed as revelation rather than conquest. He speaks calmly, confidently, with complete certainty that history has misunderstood the true nature of Tamriel. To his followers, he is not merely a cult leader, he is someone exposing hidden truths. That distinction matters enormously. People rarely follow individuals they believe are evil. They follow people they believe are right. Mankar understands that better than almost anyone. His greatest weapon is persuasion. Long before the events of Oblivion, Mankar begins constructing the Mythic Dawn in secrecy. Unlike military commanders who rely on visible displays of strength, he prefers infiltration. Recruitment happens quietly, safe houses appear across Cyrodiil, hidden shrines emerge in forgotten locations. Ordinary citizens slowly become devoted cultists. The organisation expands beneath the Empire's notice. By the time authorities fully understand the threat, the Mythic Dawn has already embedded itself deeply within Imperial society. That patience demonstrates remarkable strategic intelligence. Mankar doesn't rush, he prepares. His understanding of religion and symbolism elevates the Mythic Dawn far beyond an ordinary cult. Every ritual, every ceremony, every text reinforces absolute loyalty. Followers are encouraged to abandon previous identities. The cult becomes their family, their purpose, their future. This psychological restructuring creates extraordinary commitment. Members willingly sacrifice their lives without hesitation. Many actively embrace death if it serves Mankar's vision. Creating that level of devotion requires exceptional charisma. Some of the texts further reveal Mankar's brilliance as both philosopher and protagonist. These texts remain some of the most fascinating pieces of writing in the entire Elder Scrolls series. They blend theology, history, metaphysics, political ideology, and outright manipulation into a single narrative. Readers willing to accept Mankar's assumptions gradually begin questioning reality itself. The books don't simply provide information, they reshape perception. Very few antagonists leave behind philosophical works capable of recruiting followers centuries later. Mankar does exactly that. His relationship with Mehrunes Dagon also deserves careful attention. Unlike many Daedric worshippers motivated by desperation or personal gain, Mankar genuinely believes Dagon's arrival represents necessary transformation. Destruction becomes renewal, chaos becomes liberation. He does not serve Dagon out of fear. He serves willingly, even enthusiastically. That voluntary devotion makes him considerably more dangerous than reluctant servants. His loyalty never wavers. One of Mankar's greatest achievements is orchestrating the assassination of the Emperor. This single act fundamentally changes Tamriel. The Septim bloodline safeguards the barriers separating Nirn from Oblivion. Removing the Emperor begins unraveling that protection. Mankar understands the symbolic and practical significance perfectly. He doesn't merely eliminate a ruler, he attacks the foundation of the Empire itself. Political assassination becomes metaphysical warfare. The scale of that strategy is enormous. His theft of the Amulet of Kings compounds this achievement. The amulet is not merely a priceless artifact. It represents legitimacy, divine covenants, the continuity of the Empire. Removing it creates political uncertainty while simultaneously advancing Dagon's invasion. Once again, Mankar demonstrates remarkable understanding of symbolism. Power isn't only about armies, it's about ideas, about institutions, about faith. destroying confidence can be as effective as destroying cities. Paradise remains one of the most unsettling demonstrations of Mankar's power. Using the Mysterium, he creates an entirely separate realm existing within Oblivion. Unlike ordinary Daedric realms ruled directly by princes, Paradise reflects Mankar himself. It embodies his beliefs, his aesthetics, his philosophy. Followers entering Paradise believe they have achieved salvation, yet the reality proves considerably darker. Immortality exists, but freedom does not. The realm quietly reveals the contradictions within Mankar's ideology. Perfection requires obedience. Questioning disappears. His utopia ultimately serves one individual, himself. The Comoran bloodline also contributes significantly to his identity. Mankar descends from one of Tamriel's oldest and most influential dynasties. His ancestry grants additional legitimacy among those seeking historical significance. He is not simply inventing a movement, he connects himself to ancient traditions stretching back centuries. That historical continuity strengthens his authority. Magic forms another pillar of Mankar's danger. Although often remembered primarily as a cult leader, he remains an exceptionally accomplished mage. Creating Paradise alone demonstrates magical mastery beyond most practitioners. Throughout the final confrontation, he employs destructive spells, summons Daedric servants, and fights with remarkable confidence. His abilities reflect decades, perhaps centuries, of dedicated study. Unlike warriors relying upon physical strength, Mankar combines intellect with supernatural power. Compared to Dagoth, the similarities become fascinating. Both establish cults, both reshape religion, both sincerely believe they are saving the world. Yet where Dagoth relies heavily upon divine corruption, radiating outward from Red Mountain, Mankar relies upon ideas spreading from mind to mind. One infects bodies, the other infects belief. Both methods prove devastating. Another remarkable quality is Mankar's willingness to sacrifice absolutely everything. Family, followers, civilization, even himself. Nothing remains sacred except the success of Dagon's plan. That complete absence of restraint makes him extraordinarily unpredictable. Traditional diplomacy becomes impossible. Threats accomplish nothing. Promises achieve little. He has already accepted any conceivable cost. The Oblivion crisis itself ultimately demonstrates just how close Mankar comes to success. Oblivion gates open across Tamriel. Cities burn, countless people die. Entire regions descend into chaos. This is not a theoretical threat. It actually happens. The Empire nearly collapses beneath the assault. Had Martin Septon failed, Tamriel might have fallen permanently. That reality separates Mankar from many villains whose ambitions remain hypothetical. He succeeds, at least for a time. His plans work, his dialogue throughout Oblivion reinforces his unwavering certainty. He never appears uncertain, never questions his mission, even when confronting the hero of Kvatch directly. He speaks as though history itself supports him. That confidence becomes strangely compelling. Players understand why others followed him. He sounds like someone utterly convinced destiny stands on his side. Perhaps the most disturbing aspect of Mankar is how ordinary many of his followers originally were. Merchants, scholars, citizens, people from every walk of life gradually abandon everything to embrace the mythic dawn. This transformation ultimately suggests the danger lies not merely within Mankar himself, but within his ability to awaken destructive beliefs already present within others. He doesn't create fanaticism from nothing, he cultivates it. Ultimately, Mankar Comoran earns his place among the most dangerous NPCs in all of the Elder Scrolls, because he demonstrates that the greatest threats are not always those possessing the strongest weapons or the largest armies. Sometimes the greatest threat is one individual capable of convincing thousands of others to willingly destroy their own world. Through charisma, forbidden knowledge, extraordinary magical ability, political manipulation and absolute devotion to Mehrunes Dagon, Mankar orchestrates one of the single most catastrophic events in Tamrielic history. He assassinates an emperor, steals one of the Empire's greatest relics, builds a continent-spanning cult, creates his own realm within Oblivion, and nearly succeeds in collapsing the barrier separating mortal existence from Daedric invasion forever. Even after his death, the mythic dawn serves in scattered remnants, proving that dangerous ideas rarely disappear alongside the people who first spread them. That may be Mankar's greatest legacy, not simply the destruction he caused, but the reminder that belief, when placed in the wrong hands, can become the most powerful and dangerous weapon of all. At first glance, Lucian Lechance doesn't seem like someone who belongs on the list of the most dangerous NPCs in all of the Elder Scrolls. He isn't a god, a king, or the leader of a continent-spanning army. He doesn't seek to conquer Tamriel or wield artifacts capable of reshaping reality. Instead, he appears as a calm, well-spoken assassin dressed in black robes, greeting the player with one of the most iconic lines in the Elder Scrolls Oblivion. "Greetings, assassin. It is with great pleasure that I welcome you to the family." Yet beneath that composed exterior lies one of the deadliest individuals in the history of the Dark Brotherhood. Lucian is not dangerous because of overwhelming magical power or brute strength. He is dangerous because he represents something far more difficult to stop: a master assassin operating from the shadows. Throughout his life, he carries out countless contracts, rises to the rank of Speaker within the Black Hand, commands unquestioned authority over the Brotherhood's assassins, and helps shape one of the most feared organizations in Tamriel. Unlike many villains who rely on public displays of power, Lucian proves that the most dangerous people are often the ones you never see coming. The first thing that defines him is his extraordinary professionalism. Everything about him feels controlled, measured, deliberate. He never raises his voice unnecessarily. He never wastes his words. Every conversation carries a quiet confidence that immediately commands respect. Unlike impulsive killers driven by rage or cruelty, Lucian approaches assassination as both an art and a sacred duty. To him, murder isn't chaos, it's ritual. That mindset makes him remarkably effective. Emotion rarely clouds his judgment. Every action serves a purpose. His position within the Dark Brotherhood immediately demonstrates just how trusted he is. Lucian is a Speaker of the Black Hand, one of the highest-ranking members of the entire organization. That title carries enormous responsibility. Speakers act as intermediaries between the Night Mother and the Dark Brotherhood's sanctuaries. They assign contracts, maintain order, protect the organization's secrets. Very few assassins ever rise to such a position. Reaching that rank requires exceptional skill, unwavering loyalty, and decades of successful service. The Brotherhood does not reward incompetence. Lucian earns his authority through results. His recruitment of the hero of Kvatch also reveals another dangerous quality: his ability to judge potential. Rather than immediately viewing the player as a threat, Lucian recognizes talent. He understands that someone capable of carrying out an unsanctioned murder possesses qualities the Brotherhood can use. That ability to identify skilled individuals allows the organization to remain strong across generations. Lucian isn't simply an assassin. He's also an excellent recruiter. He knows how to build the future of the Brotherhood. Unlike many leaders, Lucian inspires loyalty without relying upon fear. Members respect him because he constantly demonstrates competence. He treats contracts seriously, follows Brotherhood traditions faithfully, maintains discipline even during periods of internal uncertainty. That leadership style creates stability inside an organization built entirely around death. Keeping professional killers organized is no small achievement. Lucian manages it remarkably well. His combat abilities are equally impressive. Although players spend much of Oblivion speaking with him rather than fighting beside him, The lore surrounding Lucian makes it clear that he reached his position through extraordinary skill. Ordinary assassins rarely survive long enough to become speakers. Lucian almost certainly eliminated countless high-profile targets throughout his career. Each successful contract increased both his reputation and his experience. Years of practice transformed him into one of the Brotherhood's finest operatives. What makes Lucian especially dangerous is his understanding of secrecy. Many powerful Elder Scrolls characters announce their presence through armies or magical displays. Lucian does the opposite. The ideal assassination leaves no warning, no opportunity to prepare, no dramatic confrontation. The victim simply dies. That philosophy makes traditional defences largely meaningless. Castle walls cannot stop someone already inside. Bodyguards cannot protect against poison administered quietly. Political influence means little when the killer remains anonymous. Lucian represents a form of danger that bypasses conventional power entirely. His relationship with the Night Mother also strengthens his authority. Unlike ambitious members seeking personal glory, Lucian remains deeply devoted to the Brotherhood's traditions. He believes in the sanctity of the 5 tenets. He respects the Black Sacrament. He follows the organization's hierarchy without hesitation. That unwavering commitment makes him dependable. Followers know exactly where he stands. Even when circumstances become increasingly chaotic, Lucian continues placing duty above personal ambition. Ironically, one of the qualities making Lucian so dangerous is one of his greatest weaknesses: his loyalty. During the events of Oblivion, the Dark Brotherhood becomes consumed by paranoia after the mysterious betrayal of the Black Hand. Lucian is falsely accused of treachery. Despite years of faithful service, suspicion spreads rapidly through the organization. Rather than abandoning the Brotherhood or attempting a violent coup, Lucian continues trying to uncover the truth. His dedication falters. That choice ultimately costs him his life. Yet even after death, he refuses to betray the Brotherhood's ideals. Compared to later assassins like Astrid from Skyrim, the contrast becomes fascinating. Astrid values independence. She rejects the authority of the Night Mother. She reshapes the Brotherhood according to her own beliefs. Lucian represents the opposite philosophy. Tradition, discipline, faith both become influential leaders. Only Lucian preserves the organization's original identity. His death also demonstrates just how dangerous internal betrayal can become. Ironically, one of Tamriel's greatest assassins falls not to an external enemy, but to manipulation within his own ranks. The Black Hand executes him based on false accusations, orchestrated by Bellamont. That outcome highlights another important truth about him. Even extraordinary skill cannot always protect against deception. The Brotherhood's greatest weakness proves to be itself. One of the most memorable aspects of Lucian's character comes after his death. His spirit continues assisting the hero of Kvatch during the final stages of the Dark Brotherhood questline. Unlike many ghosts appearing briefly throughout the series, Lucian's spectral form retains his personality completely. He remains calm, helpful, professional. Death changes remarkably little about him. Even beyond the grave, he continues serving the Brotherhood. This persistence reinforces his extraordinary dedication. His assassination techniques are never shown directly in great detail, but the implications remain obvious. Ultimately, he becomes one of the most defining figures associated with the Dark Brotherhood across the entire Elder Scrolls franchise. Players continue discussing his wisdom, professionalism, and memorable dialogue decades after Oblivion's release. Few assassins achieve such lasting recognition. Ultimately, Lucian Lachance earns his place among the most dangerous NPCs in all of the Elder Scrolls, not because he possesses divine power or dreams of conquering Tamriel, but because he embodies the terrifying effectiveness of a perfect assassin. As a Speaker of the Black Hand, he commands one of the most feared organizations in the Empire, oversees contracts that quietly reshape the political landscape, and maintains unwavering loyalty to the ancient traditions of the Dark Brotherhood. His greatest weapons are not dragons, Daedric artifacts, or armies. They are patience, precision, intelligence, and absolute professionalism. He proves that history does not always change through massive battles or world-eating catastrophes. Sometimes it changes because a single individual receives a contract, slips unnoticed through the shadows, and ensures that one important person never sees another sunrise. That quiet efficiency is precisely what makes Lucian so formidable. Because while kings rule from thrones and generals command armies, assassins like Lucian operate where no walls can protect you, no title can save you, and no amount of power can guarantee that your name won't someday appear on the Dark Brotherhood's contract. In the cold, stone depths of the Falkreath jail, the air hangs heavy with despair. Most prisoners mutter in silence, others curse their captors, but one man sits apart. His voice, calm yet trembling, draws you in before you even see his face. I don't suppose there's a point in keeping it a secret, he tells you, eyes glinting with the faint reflection of torchlight. I am cursed. What follows is not just another encounter with a troubled soul. It's one of the most haunting and morally complex stories in the Elder Scrolls Skyrim. He is not merely another bandit or beast. He's a man torn apart by forces beyond his control, a being trapped between guilt and hunger, humanity and monstrosity. His story, found in the Daedric quest Ill Met by Moonlight, is a chilling reminder that evil in Skyrim is rarely black and white. Some monsters are born, others are made, and some, like this man, are both. When you first meet Sinding, he doesn't roar or threaten, he speaks, and that's what makes him disturbing. He confesses to a murder not out of malice, but because of an uncontrollable transformation. He killed a young girl in Falkreath, and though he begs forgiveness, his words only deepen the horror. His guilt is real, his remorse sincere, and yet the crime remains monstrous. I killed her, he admits quietly, but not by choice. This juxtaposition of predator and penitent sets Sinding apart. In a world filled with power-hungry necromancers, bloodthirsty vampires, and Daedric fanatics, his sin feels disturbingly human. It's the loss of control, the terror of one's own impulses. His story feels less like a villain's monologue and more like a confession, whispered through trembling lips. The horror is not that he is a werewolf, it's that he's a man who knows exactly what he's done and cannot undo it. His condition stems from his dealings with Herson, the Daedric prince of the Hunt. Seeking strength, he took on Herson's gift, lycanthropy, but discovered it to be a curse when his transformations became uncontrollable. Unlike the companions of Whiterun who embrace their bestial side, Sinding represents the darker truth behind Herson's blessing. The gift of the beast blood isn't empowerment, it's submission to a primal god who revels in the hunt. When Sinding describes his affliction, he doesn't sound proud, he sounds terrified. The line between man and beast is gone, erased by the will of a Daedra who sees mortals as prey and playthings. Herson does not punish Sinding for murder, he punishes him for disobedience. The Daedric prince demands respect, not morality, and the werewolf's failure to control his urges become both his sin and his damnation. Sinding's existence thus becomes a study in divine cruelty. He is condemned not just for what he's done, but for daring to resist the power that made him do it. Once Sinding escapes Falkreath jail, the player becomes part of his fate. Herson demands you track him, leading you to Bloated Man's Grotto, a mist-shrouded clearing teeming with hunters. Here lies one of Skyrim's most haunting moral choices. You can side with the hunters and kill Sinding to earn Herson's favour, or you can defend him, helping the cursed man find some semblance of peace. It's a choice with no right answer. If you kill him, you become an executioner of mercy, silencing a man who cannot live with himself. If you spare him, you defy a Daedric prince and let a murderer live, knowing he might kill again. No other quest in Skyrim so perfectly captures the tension between morality and survival. The encounter is not about loot or power, it's about conscience. And either outcome, the question lingers long after the grotto falls silent. Was Sinding a monster pretending to be a human, or a human punished for being monstrous? Sinding's tragedy isn't about the supernatural. It's about what it means to be human. Many of Skyrim's villains, vampires, necromancers, cultists, are easy to hate because they've surrendered their humanity willingly. Sinding hasn't. He clings to it desperately. That's what makes him so disturbing. He reminds us that the line between good and evil isn't always drawn by gods or Daedra. It's drawn by circumstance. Had Sinding been born in Whiterun or joined the Companions, his lycanthropy might have been hailed as honour. Had he learned control, he might have been a hero. Instead, he became an outcast, defined by one moment of horror that destroyed everything he was. Skyrim is filled with murderers, but few haunt the player the way Sinding does, because his sin feels uncomfortably close to our own capacity for error. When you finally confront Sinding in Bloated Man's Grotto, he appears not as a monster but as a man in tattered clothes. His eyes are filled with sorrow. Yet the moment the moonlight strikes, the transformation begins. Bones snapping, muscles twisting, fur bursting from skin. It's one of Skyrim's most striking visual moments. You're not watching a beast emerge, you're watching a man vanish. The werewolf form, so often portrayed as powerful and majestic, becomes horrifying in this context. The transformation isn't freedom, it's erasure. Sinding ceases to exist the moment the beast awakens. That's the real horror. Not the blood or claws, but the obliteration of self. Hersen's curse doesn't just make Sinding dangerous, it makes him disappear entirely. He becomes an echo of himself, condemned to live as both victim and villain, never fully either. Sinding's crime leaves a scar on Falkreath, a city already haunted by death, known for its massive cemetery and somber tone. Falkreath becomes the perfect stage for his tragedy. The townsfolk whisper about the murder, their fear palpable. The death of a child by the hands of a trusted man doesn't just horrify, it destabilizes. It makes the town question safety, morality, and the thin line separating ordinary life from chaos. Sinding's presence in the jail isn't just narrative flavour, it's atmospheric storytelling. His cell, dimly lit and claustrophobic, becomes a microcosm of Falkreath itself, a place where grief and fear coexist, and where every shadow might hide something best left unseen. After his escape, the city doesn't breathe easier. It lives in denial. The townsfolk never mention him again, but the silence feels intentional, like a wound that everyone chooses to ignore. Sinding's tale is intertwined with Hersen's philosophy, the eternal hunt. To Hersen, every creature has a place, predator or prey. But Sinding defies this order. He refuses to hunt, refuses to embrace the beast, and in doing so, becomes prey to both men and gods. His rebellion gives his story a mythic weight. Sinding is a tragic Prometheus, punished for rejecting divine will. Yet, unlike most Daedric worshippers, he doesn't seek power or immortality. He seeks forgiveness. This defiance transforms him from villain to victim. He stands as proof that the Daedra's gift is never truly a blessing. Hersen's game is endless, and Sinding's suffering ensures it continues. The player too becomes part of the hunt, not as a hero, but as another piece on Hersen's board. Whether you kill Sinding or not, you've played your role. The prince wins either way. Long after the quest ends, Sinding remains one of Skyrim's most quietly unsettling figures. Unlike most Daedric quests, which reward you with a relic or closure, ill met by moonlight lingers. The grotto's stillness, the corpse-strewn ground, and Hersen's cold approval leave a chill that no gold or artifact can dispel. Sinding is disturbing not because he's evil, but because he's tragic. He reminds us that in Skyrim, even good intentions can lead to horror, that mercy and monstrosity often walk hand in hand. And when you next pass through Falkreath, you might glance towards the jail and think of the man who sat there, whispering his confession into the dark. And somewhere deep in the forests of Skyrim, under the pale light of the moon, you might hear the echo of a howl, not of hunger, but of sorrow. Sinding's story is one of the most powerful in the Elder Scrolls, because it dares to blur the boundaries between man and monster. He is cursed, yes, but his real torment is not the fur or fangs, it's memory. He remembers the girl's face, he remembers the blood, he remembers being human, and that is what truly damns him even more. Hersen's curse made him a beast, but guilt made him eternal. He becomes a spirit trapped between worlds, not quite mortal, not quite Daedric, forever haunted by the hunt he tried to refuse. In the end, Sinding is the most disturbing NPC in Skyrim, because he represents something deeper than horror. He embodies the fear that every mortal, every player must face. That the real monsters are not found in caves or crypts. They live within us, waiting for the moon to rise. Power in the Elder Scrolls comes in many forms. Some characters wield godlike magic capable of reshaping reality, while others command vast armies, ancient artifacts, or entire civilizations. But as we've seen, the most dangerous NPCs aren't always the strongest in a straight fight. They're the ones whose actions leave lasting scars on the history of Tamriel. Whether it was Dagoth seeking to remake Morrowind through divine corruption, Mankar Camoran bringing about the Oblivion crisis, or Lucian Lechance proving that a single assassin can alter the fate of nations. Each of these characters changed the course of history in their own way. That's what makes the Elder Scrolls such a fascinating universe. Its greatest threats aren't simply monsters to defeat. They're complex individuals driven by ambition, belief, revenge, or an unshakable vision of what the world could become. Because in Tamriel, the most dangerous person isn't always the one carrying the biggest sword. It's the one capable of changing the fate of an entire world.